Welcome to episode 261 of the AGEIST Podcast. I'm David Stewart, and I'm here with my ever-curious co-host, Margaret May.
Hello, David. How are you doing today?
Well, I'm doing all right. It's a rainy day in New York, but that's all right. It's my favorite season, fall, and I have a lot of travel coming up the next few weeks, so I'm just sort of enjoying not being on an airplane today.
Enjoying the cozy fall downtime, as we all are.
Hygge, right? That wonderful Scandinavian. It's just sort of I don't know how they marketed that thing, like hygge, like, okay, so that's like, it's cold and miserable outside, but inside it's nice and cozy, which is, I guess, a way to distract us from the cold and miserable that's outside.
Yeah, it's just, form of hibernation.
Right.
Marketing more hibernation, which is what we all need when it's this cold outside.
Human hibernation, otherwise known as hygge.
Well, this week we are speaking with an awesome guest, Amy Hawthorne. She is the Director of Mental Health and Wellness at Canyon Ranch. She's a licensed therapist who works at the intersection of psychology, physical vitality, and longevity. Her take on self-compassion, shame, and the quiet power of small change is truly mind and heart opening.
We're really good at following directions or getting lists of things that we need to go and do. Here's your numbers, here's your plan. But a lot of times there's this gap between doing what it is that we know we should be doing and then actually carrying through with doing that. So that's really where mental health fits in. What really truly motivates us is not the things that we know. It's not really the conscious mind. It's more of that kind of subconscious, the parts of ourselves that are deeply rooted in kind of really old, oftentimes minimized times of life and ways of being.
After my chat with Amy, we've got 3 compelling health and wellness stories to talk about. Margaret, what you got coming up?
Well, there's a 100-year-old sushi legend who is still at work. We have luxury gyms that are starting to ban phones, and a new study found that art galleries aren't just aesthetic, they can improve your well-being in more ways than one.
I'm thinking Jiro is coming up on the menu.
Potentially. You'll have to tune in to see.
Lots to look forward to. We'll jump in after a quick word from our sponsor.
The first time I cooked a new Ohana Reserve Aged Cut for Maui Nui venison, I knew I couldn't go back. This isn't just meat. It's wild harvested axis deer from Maui, aged 14 days for that deep, rich flavor that makes you stop mid-bite. No feedlots, no antibiotics, just clean, nutrient-dense venison that feels as good as it tastes. Subscribe now at mauinuivenison.com/aegis and get a free 12-pack of venison jerky sticks with your first order of $79 or more. That's MAUINUI venison.com/aegis. But be quick, the Ohana Reserve Cuts come in limited quantities, so once they're gone, that's it. Finally, when you're asked where you heard about Maui Nui, don't forget to mention the AGEIST Podcast. It goes a long way for the show. It's easy to forget about hydration as the seasons change. However, keeping your fluid intake up is key to maintaining your health and energy level during winter. Whether I'm on the mountain or in the city, Element electrolytes give me the hydration boost that I need. Plus, their newest flavor and my favorite, lemonade salt, has become a permanent Element product. Try Element today by going to element.com/ageist and receive a free 8-serving sample pack with any purchase. That's drinklmnt.com/ageist. Today's show is brought to you in part by Fatty 15, an incredible breakthrough in healthy aging. Fatty 15 is the first supplement to feature C15, a newly discovered essential fatty acid that helps repair and protect your cells as you age. Fatty 15 is on a mission to optimize your C15 levels to support your long-term health and wellness, especially as you get older. Get 15% off your 90-day starter kit at fatty15.com/ageist with code AGEIST at checkout.
Okay, time to give Amy Hawthorne a call. Hey, Amy.
Hi.
Good to see you today. Are you in Tucson?
I am in Tucson. I am based out of Tucson, Arizona.
There's so many things I want to talk about today. Before we dive into it, could you give everybody a bit of your background?
Absolutely. I am a licensed marriage and family therapist by trade. I serve as the Director of Mental Health and Wellness at Canyon Ranch. I oversee our Tucson property, our Lenox property, and then the development of our newest property out in Austin in terms of the direction of the mental health component here. So I have a team of therapists and I get to show up at work every day and practice my craft in one of the most phenomenal settings that I can imagine.
As I think about Canyon Ranch and I think about mental health, especially we're going to be working together in the Longevity 8 program coming up in a few weeks. What role do you play in that?
Longevity 8 is this really kind of novel and unique take on health span, right? And we're really good at following directions or getting lists of things that we need to go and do. Here's your numbers, here's your plan. But a lot of times there's this gap between doing what it is that we know we should be doing and then actually carrying through with doing that. So that's really where mental health fits in. What really truly motivates us is not the things that we know. It's not really the conscious mind. It's more of that kind of subconscious, the parts of ourselves that are deeply rooted in kind of really old, oftentimes minimized times of life and ways of being. So the mental health component to Longevity 8 is really, to me, is really the crux of what makes this different. I mean, people, you can have all of the things in your life that you think that you want or need, but if you are not satisfied in your relationships, if you can't get out of bed in the morning, if you are engaging in behaviors that no longer serve you, despite all of the things that all of us intelligent people know, then our longevity, our health span, our wellness is not really full and whole. And so the mental health component is really bridging that gap between all of the things that we know we need to do, but that part of ourselves that still oftentimes finds ourselves in situations that are no longer serving us.
Like, how does self-compassion come into this?
It's funny that you say that. I have a talk that I do. We do presentations, CME, lectures, and presentations for people. And one of them I happen to do is on self-compassion. And to me, self-compassion is not a luxury, but it's an absolute necessity. If we want to create any sort of long-lasting, meaningful change in our lives, self-compassion is a tool that we absolutely need on board to do so. So self-compassion is the ability to walk with ourselves through any type of suffering without the judgment that we tend to attach to it. And I wholeheartedly believe and stand by the idea that if we don't incorporate that into our lives, we're not going to have the capacity to evolve in the ways that we say that we want to. Self-compassion is really one of the only ways of truly dealing with and healing shame and trauma as well, which are two things that are really at the crux of what gets in our way of evolving as human beings. And a lot of times we're not really even aware of the degree to which those things play a role in our lives. And so self-compassion to me is really the key, is really a cornerstone component of any sort of change, which is what people are looking to do when they come to Longevity 8, or really it's just an integral part of life is change. So self-compassion and change can't have one without the other.
And how would someone know, or how would you know if somebody is experiencing shame or self-criticism?
Shame is really interesting because the degree to which it has kind of infiltrated us, because it's done at such a fundamental and foundational level, oftentimes we really don't have a real sense of awareness around how we have internalized it and how it is manifesting in our lives. So it's really kind of this silent, but oftentimes, deadly, literally or metaphorically mostly, components of ourselves. And so, shame masks itself. Addiction, relationship issues, the way in which we motivate ourselves, the way in which we relate to the world, the people we attract and who we're attracted to, how we manage ourselves in relation to stress, the barriers that show up when we're attempting to change. Oftentimes, these themes or these patterns that we run into time and time again, we can follow these threads back to this relationship that we have with ourselves. And our relationship with ourselves, it is fundamental in how we go out and move through the world. The reality is most of us have it. The degree to which we recognize it, accept it, and integrate it is different. And so my hope is that people can recognize where that shows up for them and then learn how to integrate it. Because the goal isn't just to amputate parts of ourselves, it's to integrate these parts of ourselves to live our fullest expression of who we are. So shame is a tricky one, and it's something that I think oftentimes we need support and an external perspective to kind of help us more deeply understand how it manifests for us.
So interesting. So give me an example of like hidden shameful messages I may be telling myself that I don't recognize as shame.
Well, first, let's, a little bit of the difference between guilt and shame, right? Guilt is it's a highly adaptive emotion to have. Guilt is necessary for us as human beings. It promotes connection. It helps us to form a moral compass. Evolutionarily speaking, to have people in your tribe who could experience guilt was really important, because that at the end of the day, if I feel guilt about something, I'm going to turn towards you. Literally, metaphorically, I have a sense that there's a disrupt in our connection and I can make it better. And I want things to be different. Guilt is also an experience that we really can't have until we're about 3 or 4 years old. It requires the ability cognitively to be developed enough to understand that like my actions affect you, and that there's a direct correlation between how I show up in the world and how other people are impacted. And while a lot of us might still know people who don't quite get that, the reality is that nobody really cognitively gets that until about 3 or 4 years old, right? And so you see this with little children knocking other kids' things over, or hitting, or, destroying things, and really not having a concept that I have done something that's affected the people around me. So I feel bad about something I did. Shame is really like, I feel bad about who I am, my worth, my value, my enoughness as a human being. Shame, the degree to which many of us are really actually motivated by it, it is not adaptive. It is not helpful. If you feel ashamed, the last thing we're going to do is turn towards somebody. The last thing we want to do is talk about it. We usually pull away, we internalize it. We are not seeking out support normally, because we have a real sense that if I am to talk about this feeling that I have, it's only going to magnify it. And because shame is such a physiologically painful experience, the last thing that we are drawn to do is anything that feels like we're going to intensify or magnify it. So we don't tend to turn towards people. We're not vulnerable. We don't share. Shame is also an experience that people can have pre-language, because shame does not require the development cognitively to understand context, to rationalize, to justify. Shame is really a central nervous system related experience. So shame can develop in response not to overt experiences, but more often than not, it develops in response to deeply felt senses. And we're informed by this just subconsciously. So shame is something that can be deeply rooted in experiences. Oftentimes, our foundation is our family of origin, the family in which we're developing. And so oftentimes shame can look like, people pleasing to the degree to which it is detrimental to our well-being. Shame can show up in relationship patterns. It can show up in addictions. It can show up in the re-traumatization of ourselves in relation to how we move through the world, our boundaries, what we tolerate. It can show up in oftentimes our self-talk and how we make sense of ourselves in relation to the world. And again, this is all fundamentally rooted really early on. And a lot of times we really don't understand the fact that our early childhood experiences are not just exponentially more impactful on our development as a human being, but it's disproportionately impactful on our development as a human being. And so if we really want to start to look at the roots of things, it's important that we have the courage to begin to really look at where this began and then how it's manifested over time.
I'm curious to know, you seem like a very active person, and you're in a place where there's like a lot of activity. Talk to me about the intersection of physical activity and mental well-being. How are you seeing that?
Physical activity and mental well-being are inextricably linked, right? And I think that we kind of all intuitively know that. But there's a couple ways in which I see it. I mean, first of all, oftentimes people are not treating themselves inherently as if they're worthy, valuable human beings. And when we deeply love somebody and care about somebody, we want to take care of them in ways from like not just how we react and respond to them, but how we're feeding them, how we're encouraging them to move their bodies, the choices they're making with their bodies. And so oftentimes I see this disconnect because people who are stuck in shame or have experienced trauma or, have difficulty setting boundaries or feeling depressed, any of the kind of mental health stuff, one of the things that goes is the decisions they're making about their body. And so we end up saying, like, I want to be well, I want to be healthy. But when we really take a look at the big picture of things, people oftentimes aren't treating themselves as if they're worthy, valuable human beings worth taking care of. And one of the most important things we can do for this vessel that our soul has decided to inhabit is move it, is to take care of it, is to be mindful of what we put in it. I also see trauma, especially unhealed, unaddressed trauma, can oftentimes impact people's movement. Truly, literally, people who have experienced trauma or feel disconnected from their own bodies have a difficult time exercising, and it will show up that way. And so those things, like I mentioned, they're inextricably linked: mental health and wellness and movement and activity. Even just aside from all of the amazing neurotransmitters that are released and the benefits that come neurologically with movement that we're all, I think, kind of, just generally familiar with.
So help me out here. So I understand if one is experiencing shame or has experienced trauma, one may have resistance to using one's body. Now, does it go the other way if to reduce shame and these negative feelings, one starts to use one's body more? Does it go that way too?
Absolutely. And I think the thing is, once people get started on the path of taking care of yourself, the benefits are inherent and they build upon themselves. So while sometimes it's difficult to get the momentum going, when you begin to show up for yourself and treat yourself and manage yourself as if you are a person worth taking care of, that has internal, long-lasting benefits. So when people start down this path of exercise, or start down the path of nutrition, start down the path of saying no when they mean no, start down these paths, the benefits and the rewards are inherent. And so they start to see them really quickly.
So in your experience at Canyon Ranch, what are the sort of breakthroughs that you've seen in this mind-body connection?
I mean, the neat thing about Canyon Ranch and the way in which we work is that because we get to work with people who are curious, who are motivated, who are intentional, is that the breakthroughs that can happen are, every single day. So the breakthroughs can range from more deeply understanding the why behind things. That's some of the biggest breakthroughs that I see with people in my office specifically, is that people don't have a real understanding of why is it like this? I know it shouldn't be like this, or I know I shouldn't be eating this, or this relationship is unhealthy or toxic, or, I am so successful and for all intents and purposes, I should be happy, but where's the why? And so the most powerful breakthroughs I personally see are people who walk away sometimes from just a 50-minute session with a deeper understanding of why I ended up where I'm at. Why is this still happening in my life? And most of the time, it's not just because they need to know more. People are really smart. People get it intellectually. So that deeper connection between why am I at where I'm at, even though I know all of this stuff, is really powerful, because when you can understand the deeper why, you have the opportunity to change your perspective. And when your perspective shifts, that opens up possibility for your life to be different. And so I see that happen daily in a really short amount of time.
I just want to write down what you said. That was really good. I hope you're enjoying the conversation so far. More to come right after this message.
We talk a lot about what goes into our food, but rarely do we think about where it comes from, how the animal lived, what it ate, whether it ever saw the sun. The first time I cooked Maui Nui's Ohana Reserve venison, I could taste the difference. This was meat that lived well and free, and it shows. No stress, no hormones, just clean, nutrient-dense, unbelievably tender, wild venison aged for 14 days. What's more, you feel better after eating it. That's not hype. It's 22 grams of protein per 100 calories and a freedom you can taste. But this isn't in stores, it's subscription only. The Ohana Reserve box gives you 3 premium aged cuts and ground venison delivered frozen right to your door. Go to mauinuivenison.com/ageist and grab your box before subscriptions fill. And get this, they're throwing in a free 12-pack of jerky sticks with your first order of $79 or more. That's MAUINUI venison.com/ageist. Once you've tried this, nothing else measures up. Last thing here, when they ask you where you heard about Maui Nui, make sure to mention the AGEIST Podcast. It really helps support the show. Thanks. As the weather cools down and the days get shorter, one thing I'm not cutting back on is staying hydrated, and not just with water. This time of year, it's easy to forget how much we still need electrolytes, especially if you're working out, fasting, or just living in a heated house all day. That's where Element comes in, my go-to for clean, zero-sugar electrolytes. No weird additives, no junk, just science-backed hydration that actually tastes great. Plus, their latest flavor, lemonade salt, is here to stay. Tart, refreshing, and perfectly balanced. Whether you're hitting the gym or the hiking trail or just trying to avoid that 3 p.m. crash, Element keeps you dialed in. Ready to upgrade your hydration? Go to drinkelement.com/ageist and you'll get a free 8-serving sample pack with any purchase. That's drinklmnt.com/ageist.
For people who struggle to show themselves kindness, how do you approach that?
Many different ways. I think first and foremost, I think it's important to understand that showing kindness or compassion to other people is just inherently an easier thing to do. Even if we're looking at this evolutionarily, it serves us to be kind and compassionate to other people. That is evolutionarily beneficial. So it really does come easier. So to show compassion or kindness to oneself, it is a more complicated, complex, and nuanced thing because it is deeply linked to how we've come to understand who we are in relation to the world. It has to do with relationships with our primary caregivers. It has to do with patterns that we've reinforced. So it's a lot more complex. It really is a lot more difficult to do. So I think that's an important thing to understand. But when I'm working with people who have difficulty showing kindness to themselves, I think it's important for them, one, to understand that if you're doing it for other people, but you're not doing it for yourself, there's an inherent level of inauthenticity. And people, especially the people we work with and you work with, like that does not sit well with them, right? We're authentic, perfectionist, hardworking, right, people. So inauthenticity, that can cause enough of some of that cognitive dissonance to help people really question it. 2, I wonder, is this what you would tell someone you love and care about? Is this how you would make sense of your child? If they came home from school and said, I had a really rough day, would you tell them, well, you just don't go back to school? You're not really good enough anyways. So that helps people understand, like, I would never say that to someone I love and care about. It's important to think about maybe what did you never get or never hear from within your family of origin, from the people with whom you were meant to feel this or hear this from, and how do you start to give it to yourself? Because there's this real kind of re-parenting experience that needs to happen. So, and sometimes for people who are really logical, it's just like fact check it. Is it true that this is going to ruin everything forever? Is that a truth? Sometimes slowing down enough to be able to really, fact check and be truthful about what you're telling yourself is important as well. So there's a lot of different little ways that you can do it, certainly. And of course, the cool thing about, and obviously you know this, but the neat thing about compassion is that with the advancements in neuroscience, there's a lot of science around this idea of compassion and feelings and inner dialogue and narrative and breath work. And, these are not just these light, fluffy things that we once, suck it up, deal with it, move on. Feelings don't matter. Who cares what happened to you back then? Like we have a lot of science now too to show that deeply matters. And in fact, it will change the trajectory of your life. And so this stuff isn't just this kind of, mushy, kind of granola stuff that, people might once and still do might think it kind of is. So I love that for us in terms of the science of it.
You mentioned early on that you work a lot with couples. Talk to me a little bit about this idea of codependency and losing oneself. Is that a shame related thing?
So, codependency is a really kind of interesting thing. Certainly was a term kind of coined in relation to alcoholism and addiction and kind of the partner of. But codependency at the very kind of root of it is really, I hate how I feel when I think that you are upset or stressed or suffering in any way. And I hate how I feel so badly that I want to do anything that I can do in this moment to make me feel better. And it's oftentimes cloaked in, look at us, I'm very kind, I'm very compassionate, but the reality is it's about avoiding our own discomfort. And it's also deeply rooted in the desire to control the experience of the people around you. And so, and it's not a malicious thing by any stretch, but when somebody grows up in an environment where those types of skills are necessary for them to have, perhaps in relation to a dysfunctional parent, we go out into the world and we find people with whom we can use our skills. And codependency has a very defined set of skills. And so that's just the reality of how we do relationships. Like we pick people with whom we can suffer in a familiar way. And that doesn't just mean my dad was an alcoholic, so I marry an alcoholic. It could mean that, but more often than not, it means I have this box of tools that I developed and it really worked for me. And then I've used them over and over and over and over again. And so when I go out into the world, I end up with somebody that I can use these tools with. And so oftentimes codependency it's one of those tools, those skills that at one time was adaptive and no longer is anymore. But it's really kind of rooted in this, like, I hate how I feel when I think you are whatever, upset, suffering, mad. I want my discomfort to go away. So I'm going to do whatever I need to do to manage this situation.
It's a matter of expanding the toolbox?
Absolutely. And that's what I tell people. I'm not like, let's get rid of your tools. It's like, let's make sure that you're intentional about the tools that you're using. Let's be able to expand your tools in a way that is now going to serve you as an adult. Because the reality is many of us who find ourselves in maladaptive cycles we're pulling out the same tools that we've always used, but they're no longer working. But our tendency as a human being is like to orient back to our blueprint. And if our blueprint is just work harder and everything will be okay, then that's the tool. And then we're going to keep pulling that out. There's different iterations of that tool as we age, certainly. But if that's our primary tool, for example, then that's going to be our go-to. That's just not going to work anymore when you're in a dysfunctional relationship or we're coming up against health or grief or transition. Like, just suck it up and work harder and you'll get the outcome you want. That doesn't translate over as well. So it's first and foremost the more deeper understanding of yourself in this toolbox, the recognition of how these old things are showing up on a daily basis in your life, the intervention and incorporation of them, and then the use of a new tool.
What is it that you wish people would be saying to themselves? What's the language you want people to be using with themselves?
I think it's less of like a prescriptive language and more about intention around what they're saying to themselves. Because the idea of change your narrative, it's seemingly very simple, right? It's like, oh, you want me to talk to myself differently? And sometimes people think that's kind of crazy. The reality is we're all talking to ourselves all the time. We narrate everything we do, right? Like, you're talking to yourself right now as I'm talking. We're always in dialogue with ourselves. So I think it's less about a prescription of what to say and more, first and foremost, around doing it intentionally. And that's the part that's difficult. Doing things that we are not practiced at requires a level of metabolic energy, literally, that we don't like as human beings. We like habit. We like routine. We like these things. It requires less energy. And so I think, it's less about the prescription and more about being intentional about it, being aware about what's going on so that you can intervene on it to create kind of the new habits. But then, like I mentioned, once like the intention can be, okay, I'm feeling this right now. Like I feel my jaws clenching and my heart's racing and I'm about to send off this email that, and instead of doing that is taking a deep breath and like, how would I advise my colleague about this email right now? What would I tell somebody I love and care about when they're in this state? So it requires a level of awareness and intention, I think, first and foremost.
So what I hear you saying is being able to pause and be aware. And then I heard you almost like rather than automatic sort of first person, you're speaking to yourself as someone else.
I encourage people to speak to themselves. Like if I'm doing this with myself, like take a deep breath. You're okay. You're safe.
Right.
I love you. Right. So I encourage people to almost speak to themselves as if they are a child, because the reality is when we're in a state of distress, right? Like my email example, it's not the wise grown adult that you see before you who shows up and hits send on the email. It is a version of my wounded self, right? My stressed out, wounded self. That's old. That's not wisdom. That's not present moment. Like that's old. And so we don't necessarily need to know all of the details around it, but just to know that this is old. This is not the wise version of me. Like, let's talk to her as such, right? Like as a wounded, terrified, stressed out, ashamed, whatever, like little girl. So like, you're safe. I love you. Last time we did this, it did not go well. Let's take a deep breath. You have never regretted pausing when you're agitated. So, okay, so the ability to kind of intervene instead of just going from A to Z, which is our tendency.
The way you describe codependency, the inability to tolerate the feelings one has when someone else is uncomfortable. This sounds like the inability to handle the feelings when the person themselves feel uncomfortable and they feel a need to act on that immediately to make that feeling go away.
Absolutely. And I think that's why when I'm talking to people, one of the mistakes that people will make, or one of the things that they'll say is we'll have a conversation and say, okay, great, Amy, that's great. Next time I feel that way, I'm going to make sure I do that. And I'm like, no, wait, don't wait until the next time you feel that way. Because if you're it's impossible to intervene when you're at a 10, right? Like if you're going to show up in my office when I'm about to hit send and you're trying to rationalize with me, like it's too late. And so that's why it is important that we're practicing these things on a regular and everyday basis when things are good. That's where the mindfulness practice comes in. That's where the curiosity and the wonder and that kind of observation of oneself on a day-to-day basis when things are just normal and good is really important, because that's building your box of tools so that when you are ramping up to a 10, you can intervene before it's too late.
Some people in the mindfulness world, it's a very sort of passive thing. Like we observe ourselves and we observe how we're feeling. And what I'm hearing is much more active from you. We need to be on this before we get to, DEFCON 3 and everything's crazy.
Absolutely. And I think, mindfulness, when I'm talking to people like mindfulness or meditation, meditation's a thing you sit down and do. But mindfulness, and they're obviously, connected, but mindfulness is a way in which you move through life. And so when we're moving through life more mindfully, which to me just means with more curiosity, with more wonder, with more observation, you are more able to flex that muscle of present moment. It's like going to the gym. Like if I have to help you do a big move out of your, 3-story house, and I start lifting weights, 3 days before, it's not going to help me when we're trying to move your couch. But if I start lifting weights, 3 months in advance, when it comes time for your move, I'm going to have a level of strength to help you do that I wouldn't have had. And so that's kind of how I look at this, is that there's this kind of a different way of moving through life on a daily basis, so that you are prepared for those moments that are inevitable, that are going to happen. I mean, it's a part of life. But our goal is to recognize it's happening. Oh, look at that. My heart is racing. I'm here again. Okay, this is what we were talking about. Right.
Right. Yeah, shit happens. Life happens. It's gonna
Absolutely.
happen. Right.
And that's nothing to be avoided. It's an important part of life.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Totally.
I love getting to know thoughtful people like Amy. More from her coming up after a quick message from our sponsor.
As someone who thinks a lot about aging, I've tried most everything, from cutting-edge tech to the simplest things like walking more and sleeping better. But what really caught my attention recently is something that feels quietly revolutionary. It's called Fatty 15. This isn't just another supplement. Fatty 15 is built around C15, a newly discovered essential fatty acid, the first to be found in over 90 years. That's right, discovered by Dr. Stephanie Venn Watson while working with aging dolphins in the US Navy. Dolphins, who knew they'd teach us so much about human health? What makes C15 remarkable is how it repairs and protects our cells, boosting energy, supporting sleep, cognitive function, and even smoothing out those stiff joints we start to notice more as we age. Based on over 100 studies, we now know that C15 strengthens our cells and is a key healthy aging nutrient, which helps to slow biological aging at the cellular level. In fact, when our cells don't have enough C15, they become fragile and age faster. When our cells age, our bodies age too. Fatty 15 is clean, 100% pure, vegan, and free from all the junk you don't need. Over 70% of users report real benefits within 16 weeks. Fatty 15 is on a mission to optimize your C15 levels to help support your long-term health and wellness, especially as you age. You can get an additional 15% off their 90-day subscription starter kit by going to fatty15.com/ageist and using code AGEIST at checkout. So, if you want to age like you mean it, gracefully, powerfully, and with purpose, Fatty 15 is a smart place to start.
Some people carry this delusion that a good life is a life without struggle and without things happening, but then you lose all the upside.
Absolutely.
Everything's even.
I think that's very, very true, especially right now. And there's generations of people that are out in the world now that, have been robbed of the opportunity to be uncomfortable. And it has not worked out well for them or for us as a whole.
Yeah, I think that one of the things is I've noticed as people get older, I'm one of them, so I can speak to this. We're sort of trained for comfort. Yeah. And we're trained that the more comfort, the better. The softer the chair, the easier the life. These things are all better. But, total comfort leads to total decay. A word I like to use is aliveness. There is uncomfortability and struggle, and there's risk, and there's upside and downside. But that's what it means to be fully alive.
Well, and I think that is that's one of the only ways that we, on a deeper level, build trust with ourselves. Like if I can trust that I can get through this, in a way that is different than before, perhaps, this is how we start building a new relationship with ourselves. And it also shows us that we're capable. And when we are not allowed to be uncomfortable, the deeper message that we are being given is, you're not capable, so let me do it for you, or let me rescue. And that's creates a lot of people walking around with no, they're there. It looks good, and it's as long as it's going good, but there's no there when we really, and that is a big problem.
It would be a problem for me. I don't know about other people. Maybe they like not being there. That's up to them. But so as we wrap up here, a lot of people who are listening to this, they're a little older, and they may be thinking that, well, this is just the way I am. It's this is just what it is. This is the way I've always been. Therefore, this is the way I will always be. Is there hope here?
Well, I mean, absolutely. And here's my thing is I am never looking to make somebody into something they're not. You might always be the kind of person who is not going to jump up in the morning and can't wait to go out and ride your bike or exercise. That might never be you. We're not trying to make that you. To me, what I like to tell people is it's just about rounding the edges here. It's not about complete and total transformation into something new. It's just about rounding edges a little bit. And so I think everybody has the capacity to do that if they are willing to have the courage to kind of look deeper at themselves. But for the most part, everybody has the capacity to round some edges. And I think the inherent rewards that come along with it are motivating. So that builds on itself. So I have no problem with people's like, this is how I've always been, and I don't see me being any different. That's fine. We're not looking for you to go from here to here. Like, it's just like here. And you might find that your life is better, that you actually enjoy having relationships with people who like to be around you more. Or you might like being able to keep up with your grandkids, that might be inherently good.
Before we wrap up, you use the word courage. Talk to me about that.
I mean, I think doing any of the stuff that we've talked about requires a significant level of courage, because it requires us to take a look at ourselves and get really clear with ourselves about the ways in which we've been perpetuating our own suffering. And that, I think, is a difficult thing to take a look at. And so I think any of these things, even self-compassion, requires a significant level of courage. Change does.
Absolutely. Amy, I'm so looking forward to hanging out with you together at Canyon Ranch Longevity in Tucson. We have another one scheduled in April, I think.
Yes.
Very much looking forward to spending time with you. And thank you for all this today. I love what you said. It's not about changing really who you are. It's just sort of rounding the edges and seeing like what other possibilities might be there that we don't know about.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you so much. And I know we're all so excited to have you out here. So I can't wait to see you in person too.
You guys are all such superstars. I'm looking forward to contributing to what I can. But you guys are just all like best in class. It's really pretty awesome.
Thank you, David.
All right. We'll see you then. Take care.
Thank you so much.
She said so many wonderful things in this conversation, one of which that stood out to me was self-compassion isn't a luxury, it's a necessity. I think we can all use a little bit more self-compassion. I feel like our inner critics can be so loud and harsh sometimes. And this reminder, I think, is necessary for all of us, regardless of our work phase in life.
Yeah, if you can't take care of yourself, you can take care of the people around you. What struck me was her reminder that most of us are walking around with these old, inherited emotional blueprints. That real change isn't about becoming someone else. It's about just rounding off the edges of who we are.
That was a wonderful way to reframe that, I think, for a lot of people. And the other thing that struck me from her conversation that you guys had was this idea of comfort, that it can lead to decay. I think comfort is something that we can get, it's comfortable, right? The minute we slip into kind of like something that's familiar or even like a routine, but if we do that for too long, it can also lead to this stagnation that doesn't allow for any type of self-growth. So I think we've talked a lot about this on the podcast and across ages of just the importance of novelty and kind of pushing ourselves outside of our comfort zone. And I love that she looped this in to the conversation. I think every single piece that she touched on, they're all interconnected. And it was a nice reminder through that talk.
Glad we were able to have her on. All right, Margaret, what do we got in 3 things in wellness longevity today? What's in the news? What you got for us?
Well, you were correct at the top. We're talking about Jiro Ono, the legendary sushi master. He was in that, I believe it was a documentary, correct? Jiro Dreams of Sushi. He turned 100 last week and he's still working. So talk about purpose with a capital P. And he reportedly said that work is the best medicine. Do you agree with him?
I love the movie. Absolutely love the movie. There's a certain sort of, how should I say this, focus that the Japanese bring to a task. And Jiro is focused on one thing becoming perfect. And that's his food and his little, I think there's like only 6 seats and it's like underground in some funny place and it's possible to get into. It's a remarkable movie. If you haven't seen it, it's on Netflix. This idea that work is the best medicine, I think it sort of depends on the person. I think for Jiro, that's the best medicine. I can't imagine what would happen. Jiro would just expire if he wasn't, doing what he does. And I remember from the movie, like he was late 90s or something in the movie, and his sons are in the business. They're like 70. Like, they're just sort of like the apprentice. So I think it depends on your relationship to your work. And, if you're working in a salt mine, retirement probably sounds like a pretty good idea. Let's go fishing. If you're working at something that's really been your driving reason for being, that makes sense. You're probably going to want to keep doing that.
It can be medicine, right? Because it can bring you so many different things within your life: connection, this sense of purpose. You're refining your craft, which can be really fulfilling for a lot of people.
He's interested in perfection. He's
Yeah.
interested in the absolute pinnacle of this thing that he does. And, that'll never be reached. So that's an interesting thing to keep going, to just keep getting better and better and
Well, it's about the pursuit, right? Not
pursue. Yeah.
necessarily reaching the pinnacle, but just the
No, that doesn't happen. Thank God.
moving into our next topic. Luxury gyms are banning phones. So this kind of relates to what we were talking about on the pod last week a little bit with like fitness influencing and social media. But workouts are seeming to become a little bit more performance art. So there's this trend for some time of social media fueled fitness culture, turning workouts into content opportunities. This question of if we're exercising for ourselves or just for the cameras, and how it affects our recovery, sleep, stress pillars. I know that you have done some kind of fitness content production through AGEIST. So what are your thoughts, or how do you kind of differentiate, working out for yourself versus when you're having to do it for inspirational content?
I'm in the gym every day, and I personally find videos of me doing things in the gym super boring. So I don't do it. It's just like every once in a while, like one of you guys would be like, yeah, you got to film yourself doing whatever. And it's like, okay, somebody wants to see me do pull-ups. Okay, fine. I think what's going to happen is there's going to be some point in the future and we all look at ourselves and we're like, we were doing what? Why did we do that? What was the reason of that? That just doesn't make any sense. I'm not a fitness influencer. I mean, I probably should do more of this sort of thing. There's just like a lot of other things that interest me more. I know people who are really exceptional at broadcasting their day to day out in the world. And okay,
Yeah, when I was reading this, I mean, I've noticed even just going to like my local gym, like, I mean, people have their phones with them to listen to music, or that they have like their workout schedule on there. But I do notice that like it prolongs your breaks in between your sets in a
yeah,
way that like I feel like you can lose the momentum of your workout, especially if you're having to set stuff up.
exactly. It becomes about this other thing.
Yeah, like it can just take you out of the moment. And then aside from that, like with larger gyms, I can only imagine like in a place like LA, if you have like more fitness influencers, maybe in a place like that, it
Yeah,
kind of bothers other people in their workouts. So it will be kind of interesting to see like phone etiquette in gym spaces or just certain communal spaces, how that's going to evolve as content
yeah,
production becomes a bigger thing, because it's already so huge.
yeah. They'll probably clamp down on this. I mean, I could see someplace like an Equinox, them like, no, this is like no go. You can't do this here.
All right, so let's chat about some artwork. So there was this really cool study that came out, and it was talking about how viewing original artwork can boost immune and cardiovascular health, among other things. So a recent article in The Guardian reported on this study. It's the first of its kind, that found that visiting art galleries, and again, specifically seeing original artwork, can relieve stress, reduce heart disease risk, and boost immune function. They were looking at a number of factors, but they were finding that art positively influenced the immune, hormone, and nervous systems all at once, which wasn't a surprise to me. I feel like when you go into an art gallery, you do kind of feel your nervous system decompress. It's a special place, at least I've always felt that way. But it was just really cool to see that there was science supporting this kind of power of art and how it can calm our systems.
I think that's great. I think it's probably, it's probably somewhat similar to being out in nature or listening to music. I think we as humans, I think this is sort of a key part. This is something that the biohack crew doesn't really get too well. So I think that, this is about a certain joy of living. And the side benefit of this is that there are health benefits to this, but that's not the primary benefit. The primary benefit is you get to have the joy of experiencing this artwork or experiencing this place. And maybe it's that sense of joy that contributes to the physiological outcome. I don't know. I don't know if you could separate those two things. I think it's great. I think that, one of the things, Margaret, it's struck me a lot lately is that the bot thing, like AI. And AI is, is sort of more powerful and going everywhere. Bots they can't do this. It's not their thing. So I think going forward, all the things that humans experiencing, either together or alone, be that art, be that nature, be that music, whatever, I think these things are going to become more and more important and more valuable.
Oh, completely. I 100% agree. The thing that struck me the most interesting about this study, which kind of gets into what you were just talking about, like with AI, and we can even like take it into art, that within like the creative field and AI, this idea of like even like image generation, it's like a copy, or a replica. And this study was really looking at specifically original art. And it was just so wild I know you're always interested in how the study is kind of breaking down. So it was the King's College of London. It involved 50 people, age 18 to 40 in the UK. They had half of them view original artwork in a gallery in London, and the other half looked at copies of the same painting in a
really?
environment.
Really?
So the two groups, they wore sensors that continually measured their heart rate, their skin temperature during this 20-minute session. They had saliva samples taken before and after. And from all of those samples, they found that the levels of the stress hormone cortisol fell by an average of 22% among those that viewed the original art, compared to just 8% that looked at reproductions.
Wow.
So I'm wondering too if it's just like that we can sense kind of like the human touch in the piece, and it's something that like we're not necessarily cognizant of, but in looking at the reproduction, it doesn't have the same tactile human touch. It loses that. And so it's not like we're connecting with something that someone else has physically touched and made, and that we can unconsciously kind of pick up on that difference. Yeah, this was a really cool study to me. They also were looking at like pro-inflammatory cytokine levels and all of that fun stuff too. But yeah, just haven't come across a study like that in a while. So,
it's back to the bot thing. I mean, there are very few movies these days that are shot on actual film. And, maybe because of my background, when I see these movies, they're obviously different to me.
Oh yeah, they have like a very distinct kind of like texture and feel and like emotiveness to them.
Because it's a chemical process. It's non-linear, whereas digital is all linear and has sort of a different sort of feel. And I'm thinking, I think in the near future, what's going to happen is movies to a lot, there's an enormous amount of people that are required to make a movie. And it's like 1,000 people or something. But I think AI is going to replace 1,000 people. It's probably going to replace 900 of them. I think that probably works well for a Marvel movie, because
I agree.
Right? It's you go for it for sort of a sensory overload effect. That's why you go to a Marvel movie. There's nothing wrong with them. I like them, but I think that again, there's going to be sort of a value prop that shifts towards these higher level of human touch in things. So, like actual actors. Like less, CGI stuff.
I agree with you. Everything is, from fashion to politics to sociology, like everything is cyclical, all comes back around. So I think we're kind of going to reach that crescendo of more tech, AI, hands-off human interaction, and we're going to hunger for that and move back to that in some way, and it's going to gain more value again.
I have an interesting data point for you. So my wife went to, what is her name? Tracy Anderson. That's her name. So she does these exercises, but it's like Gwyneth Paltrow and people go to these things. And so she went to one, and she said, my wife is 46. She said she was by 20 years the oldest person in the class. So there's like a lot. She was really shocked at how many young, all girls. which is kind of interesting because it's expensive,
Mhm.
this sort of thing. But she said the interesting thing was not a single person, there were 40 people in the class. Nobody in the class was wearing an Apple Watch. Nobody in the class was wearing a Whoop or an Aura. She was the only person. She had an Apple Watch on. She noticed she was the only one there. That I think it sort of goes to the like over. It's somehow involved. This is like sort of parallel to this. I think younger people are like, well, I know I'm exercising. Why do I need to put a number on it? Sort of thing. Like, do I really need to do that? Sort of thing.
Yeah, and it might just be, I mean, I definitely am in the same boat that it's just so you're so overstimulated by all of the tech options that you're more likely to want to remove yourself. Like I tried the Apple Watch thing for a while and I was like, I feel like I'm constantly wanting to look at it then. Like I feel like I'm being like tugged, distracting, and to the same thing. It's like it feels like more brain clutter for me. So I just want less of it. So it isn't, yeah, when it's like a new thing that like is kind of been like integrated, I think just like maybe my generation, because we've had it for so much of our life that it's almost like we're wanting to rebel against it. Versus if it's a newfangled thing, like maybe later in life, you're more likely to see that's cool and like integrative because it's something so novel from what you're used to. So it's just the degree of novelty maybe that it brings. Yeah, it's so interesting how all of those different generations gravitate towards everything out there. I have it's not too late story for us this week. This one we had gotten back a while, but it's one that we still revisit because I'm so impressed by it. So our friend Lorraine, she tore her rotator cuff 4 years ago. She described the recovery as long, painful, but she set a really bold goal for herself at the beginning, which was to do a full unassisted pull-up in her 60s. Which I know that you've had, knee surgery, and like even just something so small can feel like a big goal and a big accomplishment once you reach that. Great, Lorraine. As for some people, they might be like, cool, like a pull-up, one assisted pull-up, but that's a lot after dealing with rotator cuff surgery.
She's working up. She's doing more than one now, right? She's doing 3?
Yep. Yeah. She's 62 today. She has now worked and she's done the one. She's working up to 3 full range pull-ups. Keeps on building on top of her goal and setting new goals for herself.
Yeah. Good job, Lorraine. Keep it up.
So you can read Lorraine's full story and others like it at ageist.com/story. And if you've got a story of reinvention, recovery, or radical strength, any story that fits the It's Not Too Late theme, send it in to us. You might just hear it on the show.
That's our show for this week. If you haven't yet, please subscribe to the Ageist newsletter, ageist.com/newsletter. For more conversations and curated insights.
Thanks for joining us. Stay strong, stay vibrant, and we'll see you next week.
Bye now.